About 4 p.m. yesterday, following information from our law enforcement partners, the New South Wales Police Force Tactical Operations Unit conducted 2 high-risk vehicle stops on 2 Victorian registered cars in the Liverpool area. 7 males from those vehicles were taken into custody. Investigators from the New South Wales Terrorism Investigation Squad are investigating the matter and liaising with Victorian and Commonwealth partners. All 7 males are known to the Victorian Police and travelled from Victoria. Whilst the specific threat posed by the males is unknown, I can say that the potential of a violent offence being committed was such that we were not prepared to tolerate the risk and interdicted accordingly. The information received was that Bondi may have been one of a number of locations that the males were intending to attend, but the reason for attending is unknown. The justification for their ongoing detention no longer exists, subject to a review of evidence. They will continue to be monitored whilst in New South Wales, and we will work closely with our Victorian and Commonwealth law enforcement partners. Happy to take questions.
Commissioner, so by the sounds of that, have these men now been released from detention?
They haven't been released at this stage. We're still reviewing evidence to determine whether there is a justification to detain them.
Do they pose an ongoing risk?
Sorry, I'll just do one at a time. Thank
British
you.
intelligence agencies are upfront in declaring 75% of their counter-terror probes are related to Islamic extremism. Like the UK, can you be transparent? Is radical Islam New South Wales' biggest security threat?
It is certainly one of our biggest security threats, and we're certainly looking at radical Islamist extremism as one of the ideologies behind these males.
Do police think that they're on their way?
Justification no longer exists unless you find new evidence, more evidence. They're being released at 7:30 or sooner.
It's a thorough investigation. We will have to release the men if we don't have sufficient evidence.
If they are, they were on their way to pick up weapons.
Sorry again. Sorry.
Have you met with members of the Sydney Islamic community since the weekend?
The police have been meeting regularly with. Yes, I do have conversations with members of the Islamic community. They are deeply offended by what we saw on Sunday. It is an abhorrent act. All of the community are hurting. All of the community have been affected.
In regards to the men detained last night, Deputy Commissioner Hudson said they shared, there was commonalities in their ideology between these men and the men accused of the terrorist attack at Bondi. What more can you tell us about that commonality in ideology?
Nothing further. I think, as I've said it before, Islamic extremist ideology is something we are looking at between them. There is no confirmed link between the men at Bondi and the 7 men we detained yesterday.
If they are released.
Police think they were on their way.
Commissioner, can you confirm, were 2 of these men who were detained in the sights of ASIO, including one who was under active investigation? Is that accurate? And also, can you share any detail about the violent act that police were concerned about? Is there any additional? We know there was 1 knife in the vehicle that was found. Is there a suggestion that may have been used in an attack? So a 2-pronged question.
No, I think I was fairly clear at the start. The actual motive or the likely potential violent attack is unknown, but we were not prepared to take any risk. We have an incredibly low tolerance for risk when we have evidence or information that someone may be prepared to use violence. The primary responsibility of the New South Wales Police is to keep our community safe, and we will do that. What you saw yesterday is a very clear indication that we will act promptly to prevent any potential violence within New South Wales.
Do police think they were on their way to collect weapons? And what were the other locations? Was a shopping centre one of those locations that were in question?
At this stage, that's still being investigated. No, we don't have any evidence of that at the moment. That's part of the investigation.
What can you say to the community who might be concerned? This was a pretty aggressive arrest by police, I think it's fair to say. But these people will now be back in the community. Can you give Sydney-siders any kind of comfort or indication that no further violent acts are planned?
What I can say to you is that the community can take great comfort in seeing how promptly the New South Wales Police acted. As I said, we received information yesterday afternoon from a law enforcement partner. Based on that information, we had a risk that we did not believe that we could tolerate. We won't accept violence, and what you saw was a very prompt and very firm response by the New South Wales Police.
Will there
Commissioner,
be
police
Police
monitoring-
arrive in New South Wales.
Shortly there before, we believe potentially the day before. I don't want to go too much into that information. Obviously, for public security and for public safety, I have to be very guarded about what I say. We work closely with law enforcement partners. I don't want to give away information that may jeopardise ongoing
Do you
investigations.
have enough resources to watch everyone of concern to authorities?
We work very closely with all of our law enforcement partners. We are committed to public safety. For those people that we have information that may be a risk to public safety, we will monitor them and we'll take appropriate action to prevent violence.
Will
Has
there be any
police-
conditions
Commissioner-
on their release, Commissioner? Will there be any conditions on their release? Can you tell them to go back to Victoria or kick them out of New South Wales or escort them back to Victoria? Is that something you can and will do?
No, once a person's not in custody, if they haven't been charged, they're not subject to bail conditions, they are free to go. I have been very clear on the fact that we will monitor these men whilst they're in New South Wales, and we'll work closely with Victorian and other Commonwealth law enforcement partners.
Commissioner, just
has-
a question on
Commissioner,
the
has-
licence for Sajid Akram. So you said the other day, applied for it in 2020, eventually it was granted in 2023. Our sources say that's a really unusual length of time, 3 years between application and granting. Can you fill us in on that 3-year gap? Was it denied at a point and he appealed it? Were there representations made on his part saying he was a suitable person to hold it? Why the 3-year gap?
I can't provide further information on that at the moment. I can say factually, he applied in 2020. By the time the assessment was conducted and he was issued a licence, it was 2023.
When
How
was
do
the
we get
assessment
evidence they
conducted?
New South Wales
Commissioner
Commissioner,
Lanyon, when was the
has
assessment?
New South Wales Police dropped the ball with its relationship with Sydney's Muslim community?
No, I don't believe that's the case at all. I indicated before, we have a very strong relationship with all communities. Each of my police area commands, each of my police districts work directly with all faiths. What's important is the community need to work together. This is about saying all communities, what we saw on Sunday is unacceptable. No part of community wants to justify what took place in there. We work strongly with all members of the community. We want the community safe, but I want all communities to feel safe.
How did you guys get
How did you
evidence they
form the
were-
judgment? How did you form the judgment that the justification no longer exists to hold these 7 men? Does that mean they're not an imminent threat? And how were you able to rule that out?
That means, according to law, we don't believe that we have sufficient evidence to detain them in at this stage.
How did you
When
get
was the
evidence they
assessment
were
done?
heading to
When was-
Bondi?
Sorry?
How did you get evidence they were heading to Bondi? Was it through their mobile phones, seized, online communication?
I said earlier, we had information that the men may attend Bondi as one of a number of locations. We do not know the purpose for that.
How long are they supposed to be in New South Wales for?
That's not a question I can answer.
Commissioner, with
What law
Sajid,
enforcement partners were involved, and was ASIO investigating one of the arrested?
I'm not prepared to comment on that at the moment. Obviously, the information we receive comes from a number of partners. We work closely with all law enforcement partners to ensure that we keep the community safe.
When was the
Last
assessment
couple
done
of
on Mr Akram's gun licence specifically? Do you have any information on that?
No, I don't have that detail in front of me. It was applied for in 2020, issued in 2023.
Do you have any
Commissioner,
further
were
information on when he
authorities-
purchased the guns, the permits to acquire? When were they published?
I don't have that information.
Commissioner, were authorities aware prior to the Bondi attack that Sajid Akram had bought 3 identical shotguns over 18 months? And if so, why wasn't this a concern?
Because they were appropriate to be held by the licence class that he had, so absolutely, the Firearms Registry would have been aware, because someone has to provide a permit to acquire before they can acquire a firearm.
Is
Commissioner-
buying two identical shotguns within 2 months, is that something that would usually be flagged?
I can't really comment on that. A number of people purchase firearms for a range of reasons that are in accordance with their licence.
Commissioner,
maybe one more and then
the
we'll-
Prime Minister has just announced a national buyback scheme. Is there work happening in New South Wales Police to introduce that buyback scheme? Can you maybe tell us a bit about the role New South Wales Police will provide in that scheme?
That'll be something we work very closely with government. The decision for a buyback scheme is one for government. As a police agency, we will work closely with government to ensure that that is government's will. We'll undertake it.
All right,
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Commissioner. Obviously, as a result of the devastating events of last Sunday, the New South Wales government, having worked with the Jewish community of this state, has designated that Sunday will be a day of national reflection to honour the victims of the terrorist attack at Bondi Beach, and also to stand in solidarity with the Jewish community of our country, but in particular of our state here in New South Wales. So on Sunday, flags on Australian and New South Wales government buildings will be flown at half-mast as a mark of respect for the lives lost and the shared sense of grief right across the country. Buildings will be lit up in yellow for the evening. Lights will beam into the sky from Bondi Pavilion. The New South Wales Government will support Jewish leaders to hold a community memorial event, and a shareable candle image will be used on social media. It's a day of reflection and a pause for the terrible events, the shocking crimes that occurred last Sunday, and a show of national respect for those that have lost their lives. Can I also say that I completely acknowledge that there is a genuine desire to have a mass coming together of all groups in Australia to reflect on and remember the lives that are lost, and to stand in solidarity with the Jewish community of this state and this city. We're going to nominate a date in the future, I don't have that date today, where members of the public can come together for a major public memorial. We have to do that in concert with the Jewish Board of Deputies and Jewish leaders, rabbis. It's very important, of course, that they nominate the date, that they let us know when the appropriate time is to have that event. And the truth of the matter is that we want as many people there as possible, including those that are currently in hospital or caring for loved ones or are in the process of burying loved ones. And we want them to be part, or have the opportunity to be a part of this memorial. So that's going to take a number of weeks. It won't be held before Christmas. I want to let the public know, I know there are hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people that want to stand and show solidarity with the Jewish community of our city. We've just got to get that date together and make it happen. Today I'm standing with the Attorney General and the Police Minister to nominate a series of reforms that we'll introduce to the New South Wales Parliament on Monday in a few days' time. Firstly, the government will act to ensure that we restrict the authorisation of public assemblies during high-risk times, like when there is a terrorist event in New South Wales. When a terrorist incident is formally declared under the Terrorism Police Powers Act, the Police Commissioner or Deputy Commissioner of Police, with the agreement of the Minister for Police, will be able to declare a specific area where the public assemblies are restricted for a period of time. A public assembly restriction declaration. That might be any part of the state or all over the state. No public assemblies in the designated area will be able to be authorised, including by a court. Police will have access to existing powers to move people on where their behaviour presents or causes harassment or intimidation or obstructs traffic. We hope this will be a strong signal to the community that assemblies in public spaces in a designated area are unsafe or discouraged during a period of mourning or division or terrorism. And these measures, we believe, are targeted. Now, just to give you the specifics of it, a declaration must be called within 14 days of a terrorism designation being reached under the Police Powers Act. It will then be in order for 14 days, but can be extended for a further 14 days up to a period of 3 months. And this is obviously extraordinary powers not seen before in any jurisdiction in the country. We anticipate that the Police Minister and the Police Commissioner will designate that order once the legislation has passed the New South Wales Parliament, so as the government can deliver on our promise and I think the public's expectation that we can have a summer of calm rather than one of division and hatred and protest. These are important changes, but they're necessary, we believe, to live up to the number one priority of any government in office, the number one priority for any political leader, any government or any parliament, and that is to protect its citizens. Secondly, the New South Wales Government will introduce the toughest gun law reforms in the country. The government will introduce a bill to impose a cap of 4 firearms per individual with strict exemptions for primary producers and sporting shooters. We'll reclassify straight, pull, pump, action, button, lever, release firearms into Category C, limiting their access primarily to farmers, agriculture, primary producers. We'll reduce magazine capacities for Category A and B firearms to a maximum of 5 to 10 rounds from a current unlimited capacity. We'll introduce a complete ban on firearms that can use belt-fed magazines, and we will remove the New South Wales Civil and Administrative Tribunal review pathway once a designation has been made that the licence should be taken. The New South Wales Government will also introduce legislation to ban ISIS flags in New South Wales to ensure that they're not used as part of demented terrorist organisation propaganda. Now, these are extraordinary measures. I want to make it clear that they're not the end of the measures. My government, the Cabinet Office, the Attorney General and the Police Minister have worked very hard in a short period of time to craft an emergency set of legislative reforms to introduce in the Parliament. But we don't believe that these are all of the answers to fulfil our responsibility to keep the public safe and to fight anti-Semitism in the community and hate speech and racism in the community. So we'll be careful about our next steps when Parliament resumes, but you can expect further reform and further legislative change until we believe that we're in a position where we're confronting this urgent and pressing threat to our community. And I ask who'd like to go first? Yazzie.
Thank you, Premier. As the Premier has just said, today we're announcing the toughest firearms reforms in a generation. They will be introduced into the Parliament on Monday. These reforms are about one thing: keeping the people of New South Wales safe. Following the horrific anti-Semitic terror attacks at Bondi, it is clear we must act decisively to reduce risk and to close the gaps in our gun laws. We're acting quickly because the circumstances demand it, but responsibly. People need to remember, owning a gun is a privilege. It is not a right. And that privilege must never, ever outweigh community safety. These reforms ensure there is no ambiguity when it comes to public safety. They strengthen oversight, reduce the availability of high-risk firearms, and give the police the tools that they need to intervene as early as possible. We will be restricting access to high-risk weapons and components, including straight pull and button release firearms, magazine capacity, and limiting the number of firearms individuals can have. We'll be tightening licensing requirements with more frequent renewables and stronger identity checks. Strengthening police powers by removing the NCAT loophole that can expose sensitive intelligence. We will increase the oversight of gun use, including mandatory gun club membership and strong storage inspections. Police already have the ability to suspend or revoke licences where there is a risk, but too often these decisions have been overturned. By removing NCAT on an appeal pathway, police will be able to rely on intelligence without fear of it being exposed. These changes give police greater confidence to act early and to act decisively and to keep people safe. Under these reforms, most recreational shooters will be limited to 4 firearms, and primary producers and sports and target shooters will be allowed up to 10 firearms, recognising legitimate work and sporting needs. Recategorising straight pull and button release firearms so they are harder to obtain, introducing magazine capacity limits where currently there are absolutely none, and we will look at digitising the ammunition register. These measures help to reduce mass harm. Recreational gun users will be required to be a member of a gun club. Gun clubs and ranges will be registered on the online Gun Safe portal that is managed by the Firearms Registry of the New South Wales Police. This will improve transparency and oversight. Safe storage inspections will now occur before a firearm is acquired, not after. These changes close gaps and ensures guns are stored responsibly from day one. We recognise there are many law-abiding, responsible firearms owners in this state. These reforms are not about targeting those people. They are about stronger checks, clearer rules and better oversight so that firearms do not fall into the wrong hands. Where people are required to surrender firearms due to the new limits, a buyback scheme will be established with the federal government, a 50-50 cost share, alongside the existing permanent amnesty.
Thanks, Minister. As the Premier said, we'll be introducing unprecedented laws on Monday in relation to public gatherings. I just want to make it clear, we don't have the power, the government doesn't have the power to declare the streets of New South Wales or any parts of them a no-go zone. We don't have the power to do that. The Premier has said very clearly that he wants, and we all agree, this summer to be a summer of healing, not of protest and not of division. These laws apply all over New South Wales. It'll enable the Police Commissioner or Deputy Commissioner in concurrence with the Minister to declare an area one where no Form 1s can be approved. That means there will be no authorised public assemblies. So they're not targeted, importantly, at any person, any group, any individual, any ideology, any community. They are based purely on public safety. So the Commissioner and the Minister for Police will be able to declare these areas where they fear that a public assembly is likely to cause a reasonable person to fear harassment, intimidation or violence, or to fear for their safety or pose a risk to community safety. They can be made for 14 days periods and they can be extended and the areas can be amended as well. As I say, this is not to shut any one group out or to tell them to stay at home. This is based on public safety and public safety alone.
Thanks, Pete.
In addition to that, as the Premier said, we will be moving to ban the public display of the Islamic flag. Of Islamic State. They are murderous barbarians. There is no legitimate purpose for displaying an Islamic State or ISIS flag in New South Wales except to cause fear and intimidation and insult. And those days are over. But this will not be the end of it. We'll talk to our Commonwealth counterparts and to community groups, and if we need to declare other symbols and other flags prohibited, we will. One of the things I would be calling on fellow MPs to do this week in the face of these reforms that have been cobbled together in an emergency response is to be multi-partisan. This is not the time for political one-upmanship. It's not the time for grandstanding. We don't have the numbers in either House of Parliament, so we'll be relying on cooperation and goodwill to get these laws through to keep the people of New South Wales safe, particularly our friends in the Jewish community.
Thanks, Mick. Happy to take questions.
Premier, how can...
Why would you ban the Islamic State flag, but not the flag of Hamas, for example?
Yeah, we believe that under existing legislation they are a terrorist organisation and therefore their symbols are already
Under
prohibited.
federal laws, but not New South
Yeah,
Wales.
that's right.
As is the ISIS
I
flag.
want to make it clear this isn't the end of legislative change. We're taking feedback from law enforcement, the Attorney General, think tanks, academics. We believe that this will be an iterative change and this isn't the end of change. You can expect even further iterations to the legislation that we present to Parliament, but this is where it's up to today. And we're up against the clock here because we need to present the bill as it currently stands to the opposition, to the crossbench. As Michael correctly points out, we're in minority. We need to get this passed with the help of other political parties, otherwise it will not pass.
Premier House.
The opposition announced today that they're going to use next week to revive some of their bills. For example, their protest legislation, which would make protesters pay police to hold more than 3 protests. What's your response to that announcement?
Yeah, look, I think it's good that ideas are being proposed about keeping the community safe. I mean, I think there's a general agreement clearly from the opposition that the temperature has been way too high. I mean, my view about these protests has been that it is unleashing forces in our community that are not being contained. I mean, when you see people marching and showing violent, bloody images, images of death and destruction, it's unleashing something in our community that the organisers of the protest can't contain. And the truth of the matter is, we can't risk another mass demonstration on that scale in New South Wales. The implications can be seen, in my view, on Sunday. Not just on Sunday, but anti-Jewish, anti-Semitic, graffiti and arson attacks through our community over the last 2 years. So we need to take action. Now, relating to your specific question, I think it's good that ideas are being pushed forward. I'm not going to act on that specific one today, and there's a reason for it. I've got clear advice, is that it breaches the Commonwealth Constitution. And whilst we are rushing, I don't think there's any doubt about it, to introduce legislation to pass in the Parliament, we also have to make sure we get it right and that it withstands a High Court challenge, because the worst situation we could be in today is if the Parliament stands at one with a clear and unambiguous message around public protest during a time of terrorism and a national emergency, and then it gets knocked over by the court within a couple of days. That would be terrible. Paul?
When I spoke to Kelly Sloan earlier in the week, she criticised the perceived lack of consistency to have a gun crackdown on the one hand and to have cooperated with the shooters, farmers, fishers on their hunting bill on the other. Will the $7.9 million allocated for the Conservation Hunting Authority come out of the New South Wales budget? And do you regret cooperating with the shooters on that bill?
Well, look, first of all, we were never going to loosen firearm legislation, but can I just say, there is a very different world between where we are today and where we were before Sunday. We have to change. We all have to change. What we had done is not working. The number one responsibility of any government is to protect its citizens, and it's a deep sense of responsibility that I feel that didn't happen on Sunday. So my colleagues and I in a cabinet meeting this morning have agreed that we will do everything we possibly can to keep the community safe. Yeah, it's starting with the Jewish community who feel unsafe and have been attacked because of their religion, but it will keep going. I mean, this is a threat to Australia, not just one section of our community. And our response to that has to be, whatever we believe will work, we have to pursue. And so I know that this is a big change. It hasn't been, in all candour, it's not been a policy that we've been proposing before. This is new, I acknowledge that. But it's an acknowledgement from me that things need to change in New South Wales. Otherwise, we're in big trouble.
Is that money coming out of the budget? Is it coming out of the budget?
That legislation is not passing. So we've got to work out what to do with the 7.9 million, but it hasn't been allocated anywhere.
I might have missed this, Premier, but when's this legislation, if it's passed, when's it come into effect?
Well, in terms of the public designation for protests immediately, in terms of the firearms, I'll defer to my colleague.
Yeah, we will proclaim parts of it as we go. Obviously, some of it we will need quite a bit of work on in terms of gun safe and bringing on the gun clubs in that. It will take a bit of time, but it's something that we will certainly be working on as soon as we possibly can.
Minister, while you're there, Minister, what's your understanding of why it did take 3 years for Sajid Akram for his gun licence to be approved? And specifically, was there any concerns raised about Akram's fitness to hold the licence between 2020 and 2023?
Well, I have not been provided with any information in relation to that. My understanding is that the registry was more of a paper-based system, and it wasn't until 2023 that the registry actually became fully digitised and became much more user-friendly.
And can we address some scuttlebutt? Do police ministers have any oversight of specific gun licences? Are suggestions that this was opposed by former police ministers and approved by yourself? Is that true, or is that inaccurate?
No, police ministers, I don't know if they did in the past. If they did, then that was wrong, that's for sure. You shouldn't. It's an operational matter, and the police should be doing it through the registry, and that's certainly the case here. I have no oversight of gun licensing or registration.
Premier, can I just pick up?
In relation to the caps, can you just confirm that when the caps are in place, the thousands of gun owners that have more than 4 will need to surrender it, and do you expect that would cost a lot of money? There are some people with 295 guns in one post.
Well, it would depend what their classification is. They may be a collector, which is different again. They don't use them. It's a different classification. But even if you had 6 or 7, even if you had 6 or 7, obviously you would have to surrender some of those. As has been said, we will have a buyback scheme. We are obviously working on that. It's not been many days since our terrorist attack in Bondi, but I can give you an indication. In Western Australia, they have put $63 million aside for their buyback, and they have 90,000 guns. So that gives you, ours would probably be a ballpark figure, 3 or 4 times, perhaps more than that.
And the firearms registry, will you put in place rules as to how often firearms need to be inspected? Sajid Akram's guns were last inspected in December 2023, and there are no rules on how often the firearms needed to be checked after he purchased them.
So police try to check annually. They categorise and prioritise certain gun licence holders, and they do those. If there's a large number, they tell me that is one of the reasons why they would check a licensed gun holder more frequently. But don't forget, we are now bringing all licence renewals to 2 years. So it would be at least 2 years that we will have a full oversight of those people who are applying for a gun licence.
Premier, I just want to pick up on something you said before. You drew a bit of a line between these mass protest demonstrations and what happened on Sunday. Members of your own cabinet attended a march over the Harbour Bridge, as did many well-meaning Sydney-siders. Was it wrong of those people to attend that march?
Look, my views about that particular march are really well known. I opposed it, the police opposed it. I made it really clear that I didn't think it was inconsistent with community harmony, but a lot of people, including people who approached that issue with goodwill, who'd been appalled by what happened on Sunday, disagreed. I can't dwell on what happened in the past. I can focus on the future though. And I understand that people have genuine concerns about issues that are happening around the world, have deep and passionate interests about war or human rights or issues in other jurisdictions. Of course they do. But my concern is Sydney right now. And if you look at our community, we have to work incredibly hard to pull it together. It's not going to be easy. The task in front of us is Herculean. But we are in a situation at the moment where members of our community not only feel unsafe, but as of Sunday, were targeted because of their faith. So extraordinary measures are required to begin the process of re-establishing trust, not just with the Jewish community, but everybody that lives in New South Wales. I mean, I'll give you an example. I was talking to my wife last night. We attend Mass every Sunday, and we go with our kids. We make our kids come, with varying degrees of coercion, but they all go. And Anna was saying to me that would we be attending church in the knowledge that our kids could be killed as a result of going? And the truth is, we might not. We might decide, well, it's too much of a risk. Members of the Jewish community are practicing their faith in the face of that risk. And we've all got a responsibility to protect that community today. It is that profound, because if as soon as that line is crossed, as soon as we return to normal, we get back to a situation where, look, that happened, it occurred on Sunday, but that's in the distant past. We have to focus on getting back to normal. I don't think that's in the interests of our community. I think that would be a profound dereliction of duty.
Premier, should the federal government do hate
now
speech
conceded
laws?
his government could have done more to stamp out anti-Semitism. Is there anything more your government could have done? Do you acknowledge any failure on your part?
Yeah, I mean, of course I do. I take a deep responsibility for what happened. The profound responsibility of any government is to protect its citizens, and that's not what happened on Sunday.
Should the federal government's new hate speech laws be backdated to October 7, 2023, given
I
the
don't know.
anti-Semitism that was fueled
Look,
during those Harbour Bridge
guys,
protests?
I'm focused on what we're doing. You have to direct it to the
Premier,
how concerned are you about an ongoing threat, and should people be avoiding public places, crowded places in the coming weeks?
Look, I believe it's really important to listen to New South Wales Police. They are, as you can see in the last 24 hours, they are going to take decisive action on the basis of information that they get. They will not take a backward step. There's massive resources going into community safety at the moment. It is, of course, our priority. It is our responsibility. So I think the most sensible thing to do, living in our community, is listen to the officials, listen to the police commissioner, listen to the AFP commissioner about the latest information as it relates to you. We can't be in a situation where we crawl up in a ball or we hide, or we don't go about living our lives, or we pretend that that the only way to combat this horrible, violent crime is to stay away from it. I mean, I think in those circumstances, it's a bit of a cliche when you have these terrorist events, but they will win. That's what they want. They want us to not live like Australians. So listen to official communication. But if you're planning on going out on New Year's Eve, I think you can show defiance to these terrorists by keep going with your plans and have fun with your family and friends and enjoy our beautiful weather. I think you saw this morning at Bondi with that paddle out that there are millions of Australians that are not going to cower in the face of terrorism, and that is a fantastic sign.
Premier, on hate breaches, you've spoke about the link between hate breaches and the threat to the Jewish community before.
Yeah.
One particular preacher, Wassim Haddad, we've been writing about him for years.
Yeah.
What specifically will you do to crack down on Wassim Haddad spreading anti-Jewish views in his preaching?
Yeah, well, he's a proven racist from the court. I mean, there's been a judgment in relation to his sermons, if you want to call them that are proven racist and anti-Semitic. So we want to work with the Commonwealth's new legislation in relation to hate speech and hate preachers and the organisations that they lead. As I said, this is an iterative process. We need to do everything we possibly can to stamp out anti-Semitism where we see it and where we don't see it, behind closed doors. Now, the second element of that is very difficult because there's a clandestine nature associated with anti-Semitism and racism to put poison in somebody's heart without anybody seeing it and anybody knowing about it. But everything needs to be deployed against these preachers of hate, because what they are doing is whipping up the passions of often young people to commit horrible, horrible acts of violence in our community.
So what are you going to do to stop it, Premier?
Well, as I said, we need to work with the Commonwealth. I'm prepared to look at legislation and changes, but if it's going to be carried by Commonwealth law, particularly in relation to these hate preachers, we'll back it in 100%.
Confident that the gathering laws can withstand a High Court challenge on the implied freedom of political communication?
We are confident. It's been looked at by Crown Solicitor. It's been looked at by the Department of Communities and Justice, of course, overseen by the Attorney General. But it finally balanced. There's no doubt about it. I mean, we've introduced a whole bunch of legislation that we believed way before Sunday was important in terms of community cohesion and protecting the right to freedom of religious expression, for example, or freedom of religious association, and it was knocked down by the court. So it wasn't easy to get to where we're at, but I am confident. It would withstand a challenge.
You mentioned that these would apply in high-risk situations, including terrorist designations. Are there other high-risk situations that you can name where these laws would apply?
No, high risk meaning terrorism. We have to draft it in that way. But look, I think there's more work. I'm going to flag this. I think there's more work to be done in terms of assemblies, particularly as it relates to whipping up the community into a frenzy where somebody feels, because of international events, that their only agency is to take action against a fellow Australian. I mean, we can't unleash those temper and that anger in our community again, because we've seen what it does on the beach at Bondi last Sunday. Yes.
Well, you've called these measures extraordinary. How long do you expect them to be in place for?
Permanently.
And what are going to be the repercussions for those who do illegally assemble under these laws?
Look, we made it clear that there's nothing we can do about a group of people meeting on a street corner. We can't do it, other than the leper powers if it's at the front of a synagogue or a mosque or a church or a religious institution. It's not possible to do that, but what we can do is stop the marches through the heart of the city to national landmarks, which I think would sow division and hatred in our community.
What's in place to ensure that these declarations are not used to stifle protests?
Well, look, that's not our intention. It's not designed to be targeted at a specific group, but I'm firmly of the view that when we get to the point where you see passions enlivened to the point that it can unleash violence in our community, we have to take action. So it's extraordinary. It's under a terrorism designation. I know that people will oppose it. I know that people will say it's a step too far. I don't think it is. I think right now, because of the combustible situation out there, if we did have mass protests with violent imagery and chants that we've seen, I think it would rip apart our community.
Premier, just on last night,
Absolute
Premier,
last one.
just on last night, how concerned were you to hear of 7 men being detained, supposedly on their way to Bondi Beach, supposedly sharing similar radical Islamist views as the perpetrators and alleged perpetrators of the Bondi massacre? And how concerned are you about potentially what we saw on Sunday emboldening similar actors?
I'm hugely concerned. That's why we're here. We want to take action. But I am encouraged by the swift response of New South Wales Police. You can see they're not mucking around. And I don't think anyone in New South Wales wants them to muck around. If they perceive a threat, now and in the future, they will take immediate action. And I think every taxpayer and law-abiding citizen in New South Wales would expect them to do it, and that's exactly what they're going to get. Thanks, everybody.